Welcome back to another video on sewing. Today we're going to look at backstitch. Backstitch is often used as a top stitch or decoratively. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do it. If you find this video helpful and if you'd like to see more, please click like and consider subscribing. Thanks in advance. This stitch starts really similarly to running stitch, so from back pull your needle through to the front, the second hole front to back, the third back to front. Then insert your needle back into the second hole from the front, pull your needle and thread through, then from the back to the front insert your needle and pull your needle and thread through ahead of that third hole. In real life this is what that looks like. So as usual I'm using embroidery floss and felt in bright colours to make it easier to see. I'm sewing quite slowly here. This is the method that I would use if I didn't have much confidence. And again, if you're not really sure what you're doing, you can always flip to the back of your work to see where you're putting your needle in. The stitches on the back will be much longer than the ones on the front, and you're going to be overlapping a little bit. This is that faster method that I mentioned. So a bit like with the running stitch, we're doing 2 holes at once. We can't pick up lots of stitches because we need to go back on ourselves. Today I learnt that the word for unpicking stitches is frogging, so this is some frogging. I think this is poor technique, so don't tell your grandmother. It starts like running stitch again, but then rather than making that 4th hole from the back, from the 3rd hole we insert the needle from the front into the 2nd hole and then from the back into the 3rd hole, and then that 4th hole is made from the front. I think this one's a little bit easier to show while doing it. It's got a bit confusing. Because you can pick up more stitches at once doing this, I find it easier to sew a straight line. I don't think it's good form though, I'm not really sure. The back of this stitch will look different because we haven't gone back on ourselves in the same way, so you'll have 2 overlapping stitches. An even cheatier cheats method is just to sew a running stitch in one direction and then using the same thread go back the other direction and just fill in those gaps. This is what I used to do when I was a child. Really don't tell your grandmother about this one. So if you're really struggling with the first 2 methods, then give this a go. I actually don't think it gives a very good finish, so it's definitely worth having a try with the first 2 methods. As well, with the first 2 methods, the next stitch that I'm going to introduce kind of combines a backstitch with a running stitch. Have a guess what it's called? Let me know in the comments if you know. So getting the hang of a backstitch is definitely worth it. So I mentioned earlier that backstitching is used decoratively and it can be used for top stitching. If you're wearing jeans like right now, have a look at them. You'll notice that there is visible stitching in a different colour to your jeans. That's top stitching. Often it's decorative, but not always. In jeans there is some structure to that stitching, and of course there is strength in a back stitch because we are literally putting 2 pieces of thread through the same hole. I was asked in a previous video about when to use a knot and when to use a tack to start. Here I can't get access to the back of my work to put a tack in, so I'm going to use a knot because it will be easier to hide later. I'm just going to trim the tail off, to be honest, and then this is an example of backstitch. It's also a top stitch actually. I hope you found this helpful. I really recommend trying this stitch and practicing this stitch, because the next stitch I'm going to show you is actually the stitch that I personally use for almost all of my seams and all of my sewings, and I think it's a really handy one to know. Let me know in the comments if this did help you and if there's anything that I can help you with in the future, and I'll get onto it and try and make a video. Thanks as always for coming and watching, and thank you for your support. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye!